So this is for week 5, Tuesday, Math 7, quarter 3. It is now on a new unit and it looks like it's going to be on slopes and lines. So when you're looking for the slope, remember the slope is change in y over change in x, right? Which is going to be rise, which means either go up or down, and run, which means you run either to the right or to the left, right? Yeah. So first you want to do is you ask yourself, is it a positive slope or is it a negative slope? What is it?
I wrote undefined because of
No. Positive slope means it's going up the hill. Do you see the direction of that? Negative slope means you go downhill. There are 4 different types of slope. 1 is a positive slope, 2 is a negative slope, 3 is when your slope is equal to 0, and it is literally a what kind of a line? Horizontal line. The 4th one is when slope is undefined. What's opposite of a horizontal line?
purple.
It's a vertical line. You need to understand this. The reason why this is horizontal is slope has a 0 on top and a number on the bottom. Do you understand? What will make this vertical line undefined? Where does the 0 need to be? In the denominator, right? Because you can't divide anything by a 0, correct? But if the 0 is in the numerator, any 0 divided by any number is always going to be 0, correct? Do you need to copy this part down? So establish that A is a negative, and then remember what you want to do is you want to look at the line going through a corner, okay? So you see how this one's going at a corner right there? It looks like the next corner that I hit, because that's not a corner, that's not a corner, that's not a corner, but that's a corner. Do you see that?
Mm.
You see, it's like if you're at the square, what I'm talking about is like it hits this corner, like it goes through like that, right?
Mm.
Because if it hits it like midway, that's not a full unit. You know what I mean? So if I'm going down, I'm like, oh, it's going 1.75, right? I can't say that. You know what I mean? But that's at a corner, right?
Mm.
And you're looking at this part here and this part here. Your slope is going to be change in y, which means it's going down, over change in x, which is going right. You see that?
Yeah.
How many units are you going down? 1, 2, 3. 3 units down, that's change in y. So that's going to be 3. Do you see that? How many steps are you going over? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is change in x, which is 4. So your answer is negative 3 over 4. So let's try it. Go down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. Does it look like it's on another corner right there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go down 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the other corner. So your answer is negative 3 over 4. Does that make sense? So let's try the next one. B. For B, is it a positive slope or is it a negative slope? Positive slope, right? And then I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Now look for the corners. See if you're able to find them. The best way to look at it is if see where it's hitting the x-axis and the y-axis. And look at this one and look, that's actually a pretty perfect corner, right? When I look over here, that's not a perfect corner. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really use that one. But I can see the next one here. That's a pretty perfect corner. Do you see that one right there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then again, you want to ask yourself, how much are you going up, which is change in y, and how many are you going over, which is change in x? I don't know about you, but to me, it looks like it's going up how many?
2 and
One.
4.
Looks like 5. Because you're going from this point to this point. There's 5 spaces in between them. So positive. Give it a try. The first step is determining if it's a positive slope or a negative slope, right? Then do that first. Once you determine that, then you can put the rest into it.
Yeah, it works from.
Yeah. Let's take a look at C. Positive or negative slope. Good. So my slope here is a negative, and I like to look for corners. I see that it hits this corner right here on the y-axis, and it looks like it hits that pretty well on the x-axis. Do you see that? So then again, figure out what is your change in x and what is your change in y. Change in y is going up and down, right? Change in x is going left to right. So what is it?
1 and 2.
It doesn't look like 1 and 2. The change in y is all the way from this point, okay, from the first purple point to the next purple point. How many steps are you going up and down? Yeah. And then if you want to test it out, it's negative 1 over 4, right? So from this point, go down. 1, 2, or sorry, hold on. I did this wrong. It's negative 4 over 1, right? Because it's y over x. Y over x. So then here, you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, over to the right 1, and do you have that same point? I want you to practice that. You can also do this one. You go up 1, 2, 3, 4, over to the left 1. Do you see how it hits that corner perfectly? All right. So let's take a look at question number 2. Graph each line with the given slope is over the point. This is where you start. You start at a point, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at the slope. And the slope is change in y, change in x. Remember, at y is you go up or down. Change in x is right or left, correct? Your slope here is a positive 2 over 3. Yes?
Yes.
Which means you can go up 2 to the right 3. You do this after the point. Do you understand? This is where you start. So this right here is first. Slope is second. Do you understand?
Mm.
So use your color pencil. Start at negative 1, 2. That's your first point, right? And from that point, you can go up 2 over 1, 2, 3. Do you see that? Up 2 over 1, 2, 3. Do you see how like you're running out of space right there? So you can go down 2 over left 1, 2, 3. But the direction of this line is still going up a hill positive. Do you agree with that? No, connect your dot. And that's your line. Does that make sense? Okay, your line needs to have arrows. I don't understand why you have tiny itty bitty little lines. But it needs to have arrows. With tiny little lines or no arrows?
Yeah, just like.
Well, you need to tell her that a line has arrows at the end. So I don't care what she does, but that's wrong. Do you understand? Your line needs to be long, okay? And the arrows means that it's continuous. So it's continuously going up and down, okay? Or to the right and left. All right, B. I'm gonna have you do B on your own and C on your own. When you're done, let me know, and then we'll go over it. So with B, remember, you start with a point, right? 3, 4. So this is X, this is Y. You go 3 to the right, down 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where you start, yes? 3, negative 4, right? Then from here, you look at the slope, okay? The slope is a negative 2 over 1, which means you go down 2 units, to the right 1 unit, okay? From this point, go down 1, 2, to the right 1. Do you see how I'm running out of space here?
Yeah.
Yes? You know it's a negative slope, right?
Yeah.
You can go up 2 and to the left 1. Up 2 to the left 1. Up 2 to the left 1. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So if you know this is a negative slope, you know the direction needs to be like that. So the direction of this needs to be like this, like you're going downhill. So immediately that line right here is incorrect. Do you see that? So with your ruler, long lines, arrows. Make sure the arrows are popping. You understand? Did you do that yet? Explain to me how you graph C.
Okay, so I would find
Where do you start?
-3.
Okay. And then what do you do?
Then I would how do I say this?
You go to the slope. What does the slope say?
Yeah, -3 down and 5, right?
Yeah, go down 3 from the point. 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your next point. You see I don't have enough space there?
Yeah.
It's a negative slope, so you know it's going to go in this direction, right?
Yeah.
Because it's negative. So go up 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Long lines, arrows popping. Okay, gotta have arrows. How you go the 2 lines from problem 2? Where do you start?
I started at the one given.
Yeah, start with the point X, Y. That's the first step.
Yeah.
What's your second step?
I used traction.
This fraction is called a slope.
Slope to steepness.
Determine the change in Y and change in X. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
If the slope is a negative, right?
Yeah.
Then that means you go down to the right. If the slope is a positive, you go up to the right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You write that down. So your answer is 4. The graph of 4 lines are shown. Complete the table for each graph. Okay. Let's graph the first one. The first one to do is going to be, you need different colors. Go grab 4 different colors. I'm going to do green. Okay. Start at -4, right? Because remember, your equation is y equals mx plus b. Do you see that? So then when I look at this, do you see how the b is always a number by itself? Right? Your m is always in front of the x. Do you see that? So your b is -4, right? Your slope is in front of the x is -2 over 1. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So what that means is that this is where you start, okay? And it's always on the y-axis. So this one is different than the one before. The one before, you see how they gave you a point, like 3 or -4, so it's x, y. So this point right here did not start on the y-axis, okay? But you can tell your b here is where it touches the y-axis, which is 2. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
The b here where it touches the y-axis is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
The b here is 1, 2, 3. Do you see the difference there?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one they gave you a point. That point is going to be on your line, and that slope is not going to change, okay? That point might not start on the y-axis, which is not your y-intercept, but you can still use that point with the slope to graph it. This is a little bit different. This one's giving the y-intercept, which is specifically on the y-axis, okay? Start with the y-axis, -4. That's going up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So put your point right there. Or I'm sorry, -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Already I can tell it's going to be this graph that's touching it. Do you see that? Okay, so put the dot there. What the color you're going to use. You see how the color I'm using, I go ahead and I try to put a dot next to it so I know which one it is. So you put your color right there. Then your slope is a -2, which means you go down 2 to the right 1. So go down 2 to the right 1. But I'm running out of space. I go up 2 to the left 1, up 2 to the left 1. And then I connect my dot. And this is my line. Do you see that? Okay. It's important to use color pencils. So go ahead and do that. And I want you to do the same thing for the other 3. That's fine. I'm gonna do mine. So my second color is right here. Okay, do you see the B is 3, correct?
Yeah.
Slope is 2 over 1, which means you go up 2 because positive to the right 1. Start at 3. 1, 2, 3. It's this line right here that's touching it. You go up 2 over to the right 1. Up 2 to the right 1. And we'll do down 2 to the left 1. Down 2 to the left 1. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And look, they even labeled it for you, so you actually don't even have to use color pencils, but I think it's important for your practice. You understand?
Mhm.
Did you do that one yet? With the color that you have? Okay, well, I'll pause it and you can go and continue. Okay, next one, I want to use a little orange. Pick a color. Okay. Your B should be here, but there's no B. So it's 0. Do you see that?
Mhm.
Your slope is in front of the X, which is a 2 over 1, which means you go up 2 to the right 1. Start at 0, go up 2 to the right 1. Up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1. That's your line. The very last one, I think I'm just gonna use blue. So you pick a color. Your y-intercept is -2. Slope is a positive, so you go up 1 over 2. So a -2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. You see how we graph the 4 things?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so it says compare the equations of each line. They're all different, correct? With its slope, so notice the slope, and describe the relation. Well, what do you notice the difference between the 4 lines with the slope?
Uh,
You have a positive and negative, correct?
yeah.
If it's positive and negative, they go in different directions, correct? That's the first thing you should write. Second thing, if the slope is a bigger number, that means it's more steep, correct? Because remember, when slope is 0, what kind of a line is it?
Horizontal.
Horizontal is flat, right?
Yeah.
So the bigger the number, the more steep it's going to be, the less flat, right? Right?
Mhm.
Do you see some train tracks over there? Which line looks like train tracks?
Uh, the y equals 2x plus 3 and y equals 2x.
They have the same slope, right? So same slope, like if m equals 2 and m equals 2, because that's what it is, then they are what kind of lines? Yeah, those 3 things. If you write those 3 things over there, you should be fine. Okay? And then also part of this one is if the slope is closer to 0, the more flat it is, right? Because it's closer to 0, and 0 indicates you have a flat horizontal line, right? Okay. B, compare the equation of each one with y-intercept. The y-intercept is B, correct? Okay, if B is a negative number, you go down the y-axis, right? If B is a positive number, you go up the y-axis, correct? And the last one is, if B is at 0, you start where? Origin. Yeah, those are the only three things. Okay. All right, so in the pause, I'm gonna have you go ahead and rewrite this or write whatever to make sure you have those. Going on to the next page. 5. Read, please.
Use an XY table to graph the line y equals 1/2 x minus 4. Compare the equation of the line y-intercept. Describe the relationships you see.
Okay, so we could use a XY table. We've done this before, but when I just showed you how to graph this, where do you start? There's two different ways of graphing, okay? So the first way of to graph, there's a first way, which is just with the y-intercept and the slope, right? And the second way, which is an XY table. Okay? So how do you graph using the first way? Where do you start? What letter do you start with?
Y.
No, there's no Y. You start with B. This is called the y-intercept. And it's always on the y-axis. What is your y-intercept here? What number?
1/2.
No. Y equals mx plus b. Do you see how I am highlighting them together like that?
No.
The b is always by itself. There's no letter. There's no letter x with it. So what is your b? Now graph -4 on there. Always on the y-axis, right?
Yeah.
Second step. What do you look at? Which is always in front of the x. So what is that? Is it positive or negative? So if you know it's positive, you know it's gonna go in this direction, right? Which means you go up 1, over to the right 2. So go ahead and do that. I want at least 4 points. There's your line, right? That's the first way to graph with MB, okay? Second way to graph is you create a table of content, a table of x, y. So label x, label y. And this third one is y equals 1 over 2x minus 4. That's your equation. You need to have at least 4 points or 4 coordinates. Does that make sense? So 4 x and y values. All right, so we're gonna pick some points, right? I always generally look at the y, that or the y-intercept. So that's at -4. Let's just start at -4. Okay? And automatically I know if you start at this, the y has to be a 0. Do you understand? Because this is the starting point. So if the starting point is at -4, the y value is at 0. So your first point is always going to be -4, comma 0. Do you see the point right there?
Yeah.
But just to make sure we're doing it correctly, let's plug it in. X equals -4, right? So put -4 right here. So y equals 1/2 times -4 minus 4. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So then looking at this, 1 times -4 is -4. Wait a second. Oh, no, I fucked this up. Sorry. Hold on. I screwed this up. Yeah, I fucked this up. Hold on. So b equals -4. It's y-intercept, so y equals -4, right?
Yeah.
So then x is at 0. So your first point is be 0, comma -4, which is right there, right?
Yeah.
So b is the same thing as y in this case, okay? So -4, correct? So if I put -4 right over here, and I put x right there, I add a 4 on both sides. -4 plus 4 is 0. Do you see that? 0 equals 1 over 2x. How do I get rid of the 1 over 2? I flip it, do a 2 over 1, right? Well, 0 times anything, that's, it's just going to be 0, right? No, it's 0. It's not undefined. Actually, I don't like that example that I did, so I'm not gonna, this is too complicated for you. You don't understand it. Yeah, me too. Let's just pick some points. Well, let's have -4, so let's just, I don't know, pick a point. Let's pick 2, right? If x is 2, what is y? Do you see that?
Yeah.
Y equals 1 over 2 times 2, that's where the x is. Do you see that? Minus 4. What is that going to give you? Do the math. And also, what's another good point to pick? You pick 2. You could pick a negative number as well. You want to do -2? 10, -2. So y equals 1/2 times -2 minus 4. So what is that going to be? And maybe we should pick other points too. Let's maybe pick 0, right? So then y equals 1/2 times 0 minus 4. And let's do one more point. Let's do 4 maybe. Y equals 1/2 times 4 minus 4. Yeah, I do. So that's a y. Then when you have x equals 2, what is your y? So that's your first point. Okay. Then what about when x equals -2? Good. There's your second point, right? Then what about when it's 0? 0, 4, -4, right? What's the next one? No. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 minus 4 is? But good try. It's fine. -2. So now what I want you to do is you have 4 sets of points, right? Your 4 sets of points are going to be on this line somewhere. So I want you to plot these 4 points on this line and make sure it's on the line. Because if you have one point that's not on the line, then you know you messed up somewhere, right? Fine. Yeah. They might not be these 4 lines because we grabbed those 4 points using the first method, right? But they should be on the line. All right, cool. All right, let's take a look at question number, or B. Find the slope of the line you graph, compare the equation of the line and the slope, describe the relationship you see. Okay, the slope. What's the slope of your line? Yeah, it is a positive slope and it is 1/2, right? Compare? I don't know what that means either. What are we comparing? There's just one line. So I know, so the equation is y equals mx plus b. Your equation is 1 over 2x minus 4, right? So you can say the slope is a change in y over a change in x, which means that you go up 1 over 2 to the right. That's what you can say. I mean, that's technically what you see, right? Let's see. I guess we can do something else. Let me see if AI has something different to say. I mean, really, slope is about steepness, right?
Yeah.
So every time you go up one, you go over two. So it's not as steep. Positive slope. You can just go ahead and do that. Write that down. How would you describe a slope of 1/2? This one has a lot more words on it, but it's the same thing practically. Where did it go? Where'd it go? So read this one right here. Go ahead and read it.
Um,
I'm gonna move it over. Go ahead.
okay.
Does that make sense though?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on. I have about 17 more minutes left. All right. Look back at your answer for problem 4 and 5. Describe how you use this information to identify a slope and y-intercept of any line from its equation. Use that equation as an example. Okay, to find the slope of this equation, what would you do to find the slope? Where is the slope? How do you know that's a slope? Yeah, right? The slope is always in front of x in the equation y equals mx plus b. What kind of slope is it?
Um,
-3 over what? It's generally always in a fraction, right? So that means I go down 3 over 1 to the right. And the shape of it looks like that. Now you go ahead and do the y-intercept. All right, so let's take a look at this. Slope is -3 over 1, 2, correct? So when I draw this, I start at 2, go down 3 over to the right 1, down 3 over to the right 1, down 3 over to the right 1. You also go up 3 to the left 1. Do you have this? With arrows, yes? Because you should have 0 arrows. -3, 2 over 5, which means I go down 3, 1, 2, 3, go up 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes? Running out of space. Down 2, left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's it. Does that make sense? All right, cool. We are officially done. I'm actually going to be